Good afternoon, my name is Stephen Capaldo and it is Wednesday, December 11, 2024. And it's amazing to think that we're just, 3 weeks away basically from another year. And because 2024 has been a year of great tumult and great activity, and 2025 I think is going to be more of the same. There may be a sort of a calming down in the second half of the year, and I think eventually we're at the point in the divine plan and divine timing where planet Earth and the U.S. Starts getting some good news, but it's still, we still have to go through some things before we get to that point. So today, I want to talk a little bit about the situation in Syria. There are a number of actual, real commentators, who can speak a lot more knowledgeably about Syria than I can. But from my perspective, and working in interpreting and following events at the United Nations and places like that, I can talk a bit about it. And I want to sort of contrast it with the road to Damascus of Paul. How Paul converted. He went on the road to Damascus and he went one way. Well, this conversion that has just taken place of the Syrian government is another way. It's going from one to another. It doesn't mean that they had what they had was perfect, not at all. But it does mean that there's a radical change and going into areas that are not really are not going to be very good for the country, and they're not going to be very good for the region, because there's a lot of opportunism that's taking place in the countries in that part of the world where alliances are being formed, just to grab more land, and Israel and Turkey seems to be one of those alliances that's emerging right now. And that was a big for the Turks to sort of join with Israel. That was a big double cross of Russia and Iran, who've been trying to work with Turkey in certain on certain things, like BRICS and peace and stuff like that. But Erdogan, has his own agenda. So now it's in his interest now to work with Israel, and of course what Israel has been doing. I don't know. We're going to have to see how this incoming administration wants to handle Israel, because it's there is an opportunity to stop what's going on, and I think Israel might even collapse on its own under its own weight, which would take care of the main problem, which is Zionism. But I don't know. It's going to take some guts on the part of a lot of people, and the incoming administration is going to have to see, are they just going to go with more of the same, where they accept money from the Israeli lobby and just do whatever is the bidding of the government of Israel? And what's going to happen to Netanyahu? I mean, if he goes down criminally, he's in a criminal trial now. If he goes down, then maybe that would help resolve the problem. There are different things that could happen, and to watch how Trump is going to work out things. Is he, and what will he be allowed to do? His backers. What will he be allowed to do? And is he trying for, and is he going to be allowed to bring peace to the Middle East? So that depends on will he be allowed to deal with Zionism in a realistic way, which means that it has to go. I mean, it's done so much damage in the Middle East and Ukraine and all over the world, and it basically owns the U.S. Congress and the U.S. government. And money has always been the issue. Is the U.S. Congress is the Congress that money can buy, right? And most of that money comes from the Israeli lobby that doesn't even have to be registered as a foreign agent. I mean, that's unheard of. I think that a country acts as an agent in another country, and they don't have to register. I mean, there are no limitations. There are no controls or put on them. I mean, it's really quite a bizarre situation. But anyway, in Acts chapter 9, I'll read a little bit. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest, and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of his way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. So there you go. You have this metaphorical, allegorical light from heaven, the way, the truth, and the light, right, of Jesus Christ. And Paul is starting to be convicted of what he has done, because he was involved, as you know, in the killing of many believers. And now he is starting to be convicted of that. Now, what it is that the Spirit did, why was there that influence on him? Well, I think that that's something that's these are the mysteries. These are the mysteries of God. We don't know, but we have it here that his mind and his heart were being changed. So was there a desire that would happen, or was he just kind of slapped upside the head? I mean, that's I don't think we really know that. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks, to kick against the obstacles, or it's like weeds, I think, something like that. But some kind of obstacle. I'm Jesus. So Jesus, really what it means is God saves, and God can save you. So this is what Christ is telling him. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. So now God has Paul's attention, and he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me do? And the Lord said unto him, Arise. So rise up, don't stay down in the lower part of the body and the brain. Rise up and move forward. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. And Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man. But they led him by the hand, and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. And the without sight part is interesting, because there really is what's happening in Syria now is really a situation without any sight, without any vision. Assad was toppled by people who are basically terrorists, and U.S.-backed terrorists, this Jolani and his people. But the U.S. also, the U.S. wants to support terrorists at the same time they say they're fighting terrorists. So it's a completely mixed up situation. Assad, he had all kind of faults. He was trying to make peace with the Gulf monarchs, and they gave a bunch of money apparently, which never really got to the right people. They got into the hands of the wrong people, the corrupt people, government people and military and stuff like that. So he really made a big strategic mistake. He pushed away Russia and Iran, who were in favor of supporting him, and that he should continue to exist as leader of the country. And eventually, once Israel and Turkey got together, and then Assad he didn't really have much of a chance to survive. And so what was Russia's reaction to that? That's kind of an interesting reaction, and there was quite a bit of discussion about, did Russia simply abandon Assad in favor of this Jolani? Jolani, I guess, means he comes from Golan. I'm not sure. But I think that the Russians just looked at the situation and said, well, we can maybe give asylum to Assad and his family, but we can't really repair this situation, because there've been a lot of strategic mistakes. And Assad, he's demonized. If you watch the fake news, I've been watching the coverage of this, and he is really being demonized, almost like a Paul who just kills people, kills Christians or kills whatever, and has torture chambers and this and that. And that's a very convenient characterization of him, but does it have anything to do with reality? I mean, Assad had one of the freest, as far as religion is concerned, what you could worship. It was really quite open. You could worship whatever you want. He was not persecuting Christians or anybody else. He was letting people worship the way they wanted to worship. He did make these mistakes of some alliances that he should not have made, but to depict him as someone who just was slaying Christians, or people who didn't believe what he believed or what the majority believed, that certainly doesn't seem to be true. And portraying him as someone with all of these death chambers and crushing people in prisons and this and that, the way the news is doing it. It's very hard to believe that that's linked to Assad. Now, are there bad people in Syria? Well, there are bad people in every country. There are bad people everywhere, in the deep state everywhere, basically. But a lot of the problem for Syria was that they did not accept the central banking system. And that's, Iran has had that problem too. They don't accept the central banking system. And Russia, little by little, although that was imposed on them at one point, Russia, little by little, has been backing away from the central banking system, which is Rothschild, Zionists, etc. So there's that connection. But Assad's fate was pretty much sealed when Turkey and Israel, although they don't have a formal alliance, they decided to start working together and to just kind of peel off for themselves different parts of the Middle East, some to Israel, some to Turkey. And once you do that and everybody is kind of grabbing land and double-crossing everybody else, then you have a situation that's very unstable. And, that's the road to Damascus should be more like it was for Baal, but now the road to Damascus is kind of the road to chaos and a very unstable life, and a government that at least was stable, which is now replaced by a government that is, has terrorist leanings and the support of the U.S. And that's you've heard the old saying is that it's very tough to be an enemy of the U.S., but it's even tougher to be a friend of the U.S. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that, because you're committed to this double think, when you commit to the U.S. and in the U.S. now, all the information that's coming out, people are just shocked. I mean, the people who are paying attention, which certainly is not everybody, but the ones who are paying attention, I think it's becoming difficult to believe the lies and deceit and corruption that have been going on, that have been emanating from the government, from the military, and from different people. And Syria is just the latest example, with Syria down and in the hands of not very good people, worse than what they had before. I think it makes the situation extremely volatile. So I think 2025 will be an extremely interesting year in the Middle East. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias, and to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. And he said, Behold, I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, Arise, and go into the street, which is called Straight, and inquire into the house of Judas, for one called Saul of Tarsus, for behold, he prayeth, and hath seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in, and putting his hand on him, that he might receive his sight. Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he hath done to thy saints at Jerusalem. And yes, he did. He was in the habit of killing the saints, what we call now Christians, but followers of Christ. And the great irony here is that Assad really had no reputation of doing that. Paul did, and Paul ended up embracing Christ. Assad, I don't know where he stands on his faith and religion or anything like that. Assad is gone now. He has to live just kind of a refugee's life, in exile in Russia right now, I guess he is. But who knows what will happen to him? I think when you're in a situation like that, you can't go to too many different countries, right? You're going to get caught pretty soon. So he can be protected in Russia, but I don't think he can be protected in a lot of other places. So it's interesting if you look at Paul's journey, who was truly a killer of Christians, and he ended up a follower. And Assad, who really apparently never did anything like that, he ended up out on his backside, right? And here he hath authority from the chief priests to bind all that call on thy name. But the Lord said unto him, Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. A chosen vessel. Now, some people now are being chosen to be vessels. Now, there's often talk, in the book of Revelation about the 144,000, and there's all different speculation of what that means. But there's a group of people, and I don't especially like the word chosen people. I mean, certainly not Israel is not the chosen people, but even using that idea of a group of people that is somehow chosen, it kind of reinforces the ego, which I don't really like that very much as a term. But there are people who are assigned. If they're in their divine calling, they've had a divine appointment and they're in their divine calling, they are assigned to speak truth and find people that they can talk to and to do things to make the situation better. As we're moving out of one age into another age. God is looking for people and wants people to step into what it is that their calling is, and many people will not do that. So those people are going to be, in a sense, they're going to be left behind. They're not ready to evolve. They're not ready to rise up spiritually. So Paul was an example of a very good vessel that was designated or assigned by the Lord, not chosen people, but designated or assigned by the Lord, to do the work of the gospel, to spread the work of the gospel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. And Ananias went his way and entered into the house, and putting his hands on him, said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus, that appeared unto thee in the way as thou camest, hath sent me, that thou mightest receive thy sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost. Receive thy sight, vision, light, truth, the way, the truth, and the life, right? And Jesus means God saves. And to be filled with the Holy Ghost, meaning that you've got truth within you, you've come to Christ, you're starting to know Christ, and that's starting to manifest from you, through you, coming up through you, and you're projecting that into the world. You become this beacon of light, you become this source of light, and people can see that. If you really are immersed in truth and trying to do everything you can to receive it and spread it, then people eventually will notice that, and they will see certain things that you say and do, and they'll just notice. There's something there that just that suggests some kind of something deeper, some kind of truth, some kind of attempt to serve and to help, to be of assistance. And of course you get persecuted for that, and there's no question about that. So getting back now to Syria, we'll just have to see what happens to the people in Syria. What's going to happen to the Christian community in Syria? That's an interesting thing. And you can say all you want about Christians and Western Christians. They've called themselves into disrepute, especially by supporting things like Zionism. But the Christians in other places, they take their faith seriously, and there are Christians in the Middle East and all other countries. And with this turnabout, and especially Israel and Turkey joining forces, and Assad out of Syria, where he was one of the few in the Middle Eastern countries, his country was one of the few that actually, had a place for Christians. Now we'll see what happens with believers in Jesus Christ throughout the Middle East. What's going to happen to them in Syria? What's going to happen to them in Iraq, in Iran, in Lebanon, in Egypt, wherever, in all kind of places. There are some countries that have hardly any. Saudi Arabia has hardly any Christians. Turkey has hardly any Christians. But, most of the countries in the Middle East, they have some Christians. So what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be persecuted? The way Paul persecuted Christians, are the Israelis and the Turks going to do that to Christians in the different countries? Well, yeah, we'll just have to see. I think it doesn't look very promising, because there is an alliance of two countries, but it's one that could do a great deal of harm and create a huge amount of chaos. That's really the thing that I think people should be watching for, is how unruly the situation could become pretty quickly. And immediately there fell from his eyes as had been scales, and he received sight forthwith, and arose and was baptized. The scales, it's like the veil stops us from seeing, the scales stop us from seeing. There are different images in the book that are obstacles to perceiving truth. And when he had received meat, he was strengthened. Then was Saul certain days with the disciples which were at Damascus. And straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. The synagogue, it's a church, it's a place, it's a house of worship. And straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. But all that heard him were amazed, and said, Is not this he that destroyed them which called on his name in Jerusalem, and came hither for that intent, that he might bring them bound unto the chief priests. But Saul increased the more in strength, and confounded the Jews which dwelt at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ. You see, Saul confounded the Jews, because the Jews, the last thing the Jews would expect is that somebody would follow Jesus Christ, right? Because it's most Jewish people will say, well, this is not for us. He's not our guy, right? But Saul confounded them, because Saul, as you know, his background was he was very educated, and he was very knowledgeable of the law, and he read a lot of stuff, and he was an extremely educated Jewish man, but he was hit by truth, and it's not clear exactly what happened to him, but sometimes you can realize in your life that all of the education you have and all of the things that look really good, sometimes you realize that it's not so much. And I've had this situation in my life where I did things that I thought put me in like an impressive position, but I realized later on that it really wasn't so impressive, that maybe I was being impressed with me instead of trying to find truth and learn who God is and come to Christ and this type of thing. So I think that sometimes you have to be struck down, as Paul was. You have to be humbled, so that you don't continue to do these things that don't bring glory to God and really are just feeding your ego. So I think Paul got a healthy dose of that, or Saul got a healthy dose of that. And in Syria, I guess, I don't know, for the mistakes that he made, I don't know him personally, but he certainly has, he certainly paid the price of, whatever it is he did or didn't do, and now we'll see what happens. He's where he's going, and I don't know his religious background, but I'm sure it's not Christian. Where he's going, Russia is a Christian country, and I don't know if that would affect him in any way, but you never know. There might be a possibility of a rebirth there. It's possible, because the country, if you wanted to talk about a Christian country, is there still a Christian country? I think it's probably Russia, maybe Hungary, and that's about it. You can hardly call the U.S. a Christian country at this point. I mean, maybe people like to kid themselves or delude themselves into thinking that they are. But if you look at what happens within the so-called Christian community, most of it, and then you look at what happens outside of that community, and you look at what happens with the government and the military and all the crap all over the world, hard to say that is in any way representative of the teachings of Jesus Christ. Well, anyway, that's a little panorama of different things going on, having to do with Syria, Paul there, and Syria, what's been happening, the current events there, and so anyway, that's that I think will be it for today, and so have a good day, and thank you for listening, and bye for now.